Hello, I'm Peter Blatt,
And Darren Harderson.
and we're part of Center for Asset Management. And we were talking today about lessons learned from looking at clients' personal balance sheets. Now, Darren, tell us a little bit about why we started to look at clients' personal balance sheets. Where did the idea come from?
So the backdrop is we were actually making a comparison to like a physical checkup. You go to your primary care physician and they're doing their basic protocol, checking your chemistry panel and seeing where all your levels are. And there's a really good level and a good range and a pretty good range, and then there's, well, maybe we should keep an eye on this range. And then we said, well, gosh, we could really do something very similar with our clients' financial plan. And what's like the paramount snapshot of a financial plan is a balance sheet. So we came up with a personal balance sheet, and we came up with initially 10, it turned into 11. Key points and expected ranges, just to see where people are on a variety of different measurements.
So let's talk a little bit about those measurements.
Mhm.
Now, I know the first one we usually cover traditionally is a lot of people, their largest asset, which would be their home.
Mhm.
Tell us about some of the lessons we've learned so far.
Yeah, and it's no shocker for a lot of us, if not the majority of us. Our primary residence is one of our biggest assets. For those of us here in Florida, fair or unfair, our values are inflated, and I know other parts of the country are as well. And that's not a bad thing to have a high value house, but we approach it like, hey, it's great now, but as I get into retirement, am I gonna face issues with property taxes and insurance and upkeep? Is it really the right size, functional, ergonomic house for me as I segue into retirement? And we came up with some calculations as far as we used the term house poor. Am I going to be house poor later in life?
Right.
So.
And it's funny because when we sit down with clients, I've noticed that a lot of them are saying, "Wow, I didn't realize how much my house has accumulated in value," and or even recently we've noticed that some of the housing prices in other states and Florida, the housing prices have been dropping.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's also an eye opener for some clients. One of the other items that we've looked at is mortgages. Why don't you tell a little bit about some lessons learned on mortgages?
Yeah, the big thing on mortgage is obviously when we're working, when we typically have higher incomes, servicing the mortgage payment is a non-issue. But again, similarly, as we get further into retirement, when in many instances our income is less, are we going to have issues servicing that mortgage? We did a little bit deep dive into interest rates. We're talking about, should I refinance? Should I not refinance? But basically just being aware of, what that mortgage is on a given property.
And some of the things that we've also looked at are clients with other debts. Now, the good news about this is a lot of our clients don't seem to have these large other debts. What have you found in that area?
I would echo that. We have very disciplined clients, so thank you.
Thank you.
With that said, we do have a handful of entrepreneurs that are maybe highly leveraged for different ventures. Some of our younger professionals that were doctors, attorneys, maybe have very, let's just say, high levels of student debt. And again, while they're working, they're making higher income. There's no issues servicing that debt. But again, just another benchmark to kind of keep an eye on. And is that something maybe I should try to pay off sooner versus paying the exorbitant interest rate that I'm paying on some of these?
Makes sense. And so as far as other areas we've looked at is the amount of equity or stock investments they have versus other type of investments. Talk about some of the lessons we've learned on that.
Yeah, and it's something that we honestly, it's a common aspect of everything that we do in our strategy sessions. But it's just really a double check is, hey, am I taking the right amount of risk? Not just what we manage at Fidelity, but some clients
Have 401ks.
have 401ks, outside assets that we can't or don't manage. As a cumulative risk profile. Am I aware of the amount of risk I'm taking, and is it appropriate? If not, then we can adjust it.
Right, and it's it's definitely been, I found it's been an eye opener for some clients that they're taking a lot less risk than they thought they were taking.
Which is good, because we can show them through the financial plan, you're still going to get there taking a reasonable amount of risk. You don't, what do we say? You can hit singles and doubles and not swing for the fence, and put yourself in harm's way.
And the other area, one of the other areas we looked at for personal balance sheets is, I would say, cash and liquidity. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, again, the concept of cash is, from an emergency aspect, do I have enough cash? The general rule is I need 3 to 6 months of after-tax cash kind of sitting on the sidelines, or at least available,
right,
if something crazy happens and I need access to quick cash. And conversely, it's, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I had this much cash sitting in the bank. And then, from our perspective, that's underutilized. It's not deployed in a manner that's going to serve the client the best.
Yeah, I mean, what is a joke about, sorry, not the joke, but the important thing about cash is that you have it. The problem with it sometimes is just not keeping up with inflation.
Typically not, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
even with, the higher interest rate environment, banks still aren't giving you much.
No, they're definitely not. They're definitely not. And one of the other areas we looked at is what we call tax diversification. Now, this area sometimes seems to get more complicated than it maybe should be, but it's always a question of what are the best type of assets to have in retirement. It's not the underlying investments, it's the vehicles that are owning those assets. Think how much you have in IRAs, think how much you have in Roth IRAs, or how much you have in 401ks, or how much you have in after-tax accounts. The ideal situation in retirement is, if you want to look at it by category, the best type of asset to have in retirement is a Roth IRA or Roth 401k, because the money inside the Roth account in retirement comes out tax-free. So let's say you need a new car and you have $100,000 in your Roth account. Well, depending on what kind of car you buy, you can take the money out of that account, or some of the money out of the account, to pay for the car and not worry about your other tax ramifications. The second best type of investment account or type of account to have in retirement is what we call a taxable investment. Think after-tax investment, individual account, a joint account, a trust account. Those accounts, hopefully you have some basis in. Wherever you're invested in has some basis. You paid something originally for those, and the only tax you would pay on those is when you sell something at a gain, or maybe some dividends, or maybe some interest, but you can control it, which means that you can choose when to pay the taxes on it, and usually you can get what we call long-term capital gains, which is usually a less tax rate than ordinary income. The third type of investment type that we find a lot of people having in retirement is either 401k, defined benefit, 403b, or IRAs. Those assets have never been taxed. So in retirement, if you have money in an IRA, every time you take it out, you got to pay tax on it. And the tax is at your marginal rate, which is your ordinary income rate. And that could be high. And it's kind of scary sometimes when you find clients where all they have is, all these years they save money inside of their 401k, and they put money away, good job, but all they have is the 401k, and when they take it out, it's all taxable. So it's, even though they're retired, it's still like they're working, because it's all subject to a marginal rate. What type of lessons have you found on that?
I'd say you hit it right on the head. It's it kind of counterintuitive. It's like, I did it. I have $1 million in my 401k, and I retired, and I'm patting myself on the back. And we're not suggesting that's bad,
no, it's actually
whatsoever. Just from a planning standpoint, it's like, oh my gosh, now I'm in retirement when I thought my tax rates would be lower, but oh, gotcha. Now, as I take distributions,
right.
It's actually increasing, increasing. And I totally get it. Those of us that have worked all of our life, we loved having, the deduction and reducing our taxable income. So it served us well during our working years. But later on, it's like, okay, they're gonna want their, want their payment. I was joking with a client. I said, if I had a time machine, I would go back and start a Roth IRA when I was 25.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And so don't panic. There's ways of fixing that. That's why we do a lot of what we call Roth conversions. You know, near the end of the year when we do the really heavy tax planning, we always look to see if it's time to do Roth conversions. One of the other areas we looked at is required minimum distributions. Obviously, those rules keep on changing. It used to be when after you turned 70 and a half, you had to take money out of your IRA or 401k. Then it became 72, now it's 75. So if you're born after 1960, then you have to take out your IRA money or 401k money at 75. You have to take a minimum amount, and it increases every year. And so the government says, hey, you've never paid tax on this money, so now you have to pay tax on it. And as you get older, it gets really big, that number, because the percentage increases every year. So how do you plan around that? And that's where we talk about QCD, or qualified charitable planning. We talk about Roth conversions and some other methods we use to plan. It takes years. We get it done. It could be taking 5, 10, 15 years, but it saves you a lot of money in taxes.
Yeah.
One of the other things we've seen are what we call net worth, or total net worth, and we talked about what we call a coverage ratio. Now, it's kind of technical-ish, but it's how much times can I pay off a debt? So, for example, let's say you had a $500,000 mortgage and $1 million of investments. How many times can you pay off that $500,000 debt? And it's 2. So the goal is to have at least a coverage ratio of 1.67 or higher. What have you been finding, Darren, for clients you've sat with?
Similar, that most of our clients don't carry an inordinate amount of debt, or they're further along, that the mortgage is about knocked off. I haven't seen anybody with coverage ratio issues.
Right. I think when you're younger, maybe.
Yeah, a lot of times like you're younger, you bought the house and the car, and you've got kids and school. It can creep up on you a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And then kind of one of the other items you've looked at is net worth changes over time. If you go, say, forward maybe 5 years from now, what does your net worth look like? Yeah. What are some of the lessons we've looked or seen from that, Darren?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on where the person is in their timeline, or if they're still working, still contributing, still growing. Obviously, their net worth is going to increase at maybe a higher rate than somebody who's in retirement taking distributions. But even clients that are in retirement taking distributions, remember the assets are still growing.
Right.
So I actually was meeting with a client last night, and I'm like, well, gosh, he felt bad because he had to take money out for the new roof. Huh. And I'm like, well, gosh, but your earnings were more than what you took out last year. So that kind of gave him some assurance that, oh, I get it. I know I'm taking money out, but my net worth is still growing.
Right. So it's always a matter of timing of when they're doing it.
Yeah.
So we've learned a lot from looking at people's personal balance sheets, and it was actually, clients seem to be enjoying it.
Yeah, and it does. It makes total sense. It's a comparison of a medical checkup versus a financial checkup, and it just it seems to resonate with clients, and I've enjoyed my meetings lately.
Me too. So again, I want to thank you for watching our video. It's Peter Blatt and
Darren Hardison
from Center for Asset Management, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you very much.